So, picture your daily media feed for a second. Or, even better, think back to a really tense meeting you had at work recently.
Oh, yeah, we all know that exact kind of meeting. The air in the room is just thick and everyone is slightly on edge.
Exactly. And the person who ends up walking away with a win is, well, they're simply the one with the absolute loudest voice.
Right. They just talk over people, they totally dominate the physical space, and they leave zero room for anyone else.
And somehow, in these environments, we've universally agreed to mistake that sheer harshness for strength.
We really have. We see that volume, that completely scorched earth approach to a conversation, and we immediately categorize it as power.
Like it's an optical illusion of leadership.
It is. The assumption is that whoever is imposing their will the hardest must be the one in charge, while the quiet voices are just, yielding to authority.
It's visible, it's aggressive, and honestly, it's completely exhausted all of us. But that is exactly what we are dismantling today.
I'm really looking forward to this one.
Me too. So our mission for this deep dive is unpacking a really fascinating essay titled The Transformative Power of Subtlety.
Which is such a great title.
It really is. The whole goal here is to challenge that default assumption you and I carry around every day. The idea that louder is always better, or that harsher is inherently stronger.
Right.
And to set the stage, the source material opens with this incredibly arresting couplet. It says, "Not every rigidity is resolved by burning. Sometimes a single breath is stronger than fire."
That is just wow. Keep that central question running in the background for everything we're going to explore today. Do we want to be fire, or do we want to be the sun?
Fire or the sun. I love that framing.
Because when we talk about rigid obstacles, whether that's a stubborn coworker, a stalled project, or even a gridlock society, we usually default to fire. We think we have to attack the rigidity.
Right. Let's start with the visual anchor the essay gives us to really understand this. It asks you to visualize a winter branch completely encased in a thick layer of ice. Now, think about how that ice actually melts. The sun doesn't come down and absolutely scorch the tree to get rid of the ice.
No, it just simply touches it.
Exactly. The ambient temperature warms up, and the ice dissolves without making a sound, without claiming any territory, and, without any flashy display.
And the underlying critique there is incredibly profound. We spend our entire lives searching for power in entirely the wrong places.
Yeah.
We look at a frozen branch, which basically represents any obstacle in our path, and our instinct is combat. We believe that to transform something, you have to burn it down.
We assume the person who drops the hammer is the ultimate catalyst for change.
Right. But the fundamental nature of the universe tells a different story. Ice doesn't melt effectively through sheer aggressive force. It melts through sustained balance and warmth.
Let me bring that down to a painfully relatable level for a second.
Go for it.
Imagine waking up on a freezing Monday morning. You're already late, and your car windshield is completely covered in a solid sheet of ice.
The absolute worst way to start a week.
Right. So the fire approach, that loud, harsh instinct we default to, is essentially taking a blowtorch to your car.
Oh, man.
Sure, you're applying massive amounts of heat and energy, you're being forceful, but what happens to freezing glass when you hit it with a blowtorch?
It shatters, completely shatters.
Exactly. You completely destroy the underlying structure just to remove the obstacle on the surface.
That is the perfect distillation of destructive power. You lacked measure. You lacked an understanding of the material you were working with.
Right.
When we use that blowtorch method in our human interactions, like when we unleash a barrage of harsh criticism on a partner or publicly shout down a colleague in a meeting, we might melt the ice in that specific moment.
We force compliance.
Yeah, we force compliance.
Yeah.
But we are shattering the glass of that relationship. The foundational trust is totally cracked.
Meanwhile, the sun approach is your car's defroster. You turn it on, and, well, nothing happens immediately. It's quiet.
Wait, it takes a minute.
But it provides gentle, sustained warmth from the inside out. It doesn't scream at the glass, it doesn't shatter anything, but it completely clears the obstacle safely, and more importantly, permanently.
I love that. And taking that concept of the defroster into human dynamics, the essay shifts from the natural world to a really specific social scenario.
Oh, the neighborhood gathering.
Yes. It asks us to picture a neighborhood gathering, a room full of people who are not enemies. They have good intentions, they share beliefs, there are conversations happening, and yet the atmosphere is entirely dead.
We have all been in that exact room. There's that awkward dinner party where the conversation just won't flow, right?
Oh, definitely. Or a brainstorming session where every single idea just falls totally flat.
Yeah, the people aren't malicious, but the vibe is just heavy. The air is as cold as the ice on those winter branches we talked about.
Right. And the crucial observation here is that the people in the room feel incomplete, and they don't know why. They're trying to force a connection using words and melodies, but the spirit is just missing.
And then someone walks into the room. A Nicky player.
Right.
For those who don't know, a Nicky is a traditional reed flute. And the way this musician interacts with that frozen room is the literal physical manifestation of subtlety.
Because he doesn't walk in, clap his hands, and say, all right, everyone, the energy in here is terrible, let's fix it.
Right. He doesn't offer a harsh critique of their coldness. He simply sits down and breathes into his instrument. And that's it.
To understand why that completely transforms the room, we really have to look at the mechanics of human behavior.
How so?
Well, when he breathes into that flute, he changes the literal air in the room. Melodies that felt forced suddenly find a rhythm. People's voices naturally begin to lean into one another.
Vitality emerges on its own.
Exactly. This isn't just about someone being good at playing a musical instrument. It is about a person altering the emotional temperature of an environment without demanding that the environment change first.
It's the defroster working from the inside out. He didn't require an instruction manual or a loud debate about the awkwardness. The warmth of the breath invited the room to thaw itself.
He was the sun, not the fire.
Right. And that quiet transformation opens up a massive sociological question. It's beautiful to imagine one flute player thawing out a small room of well-intentioned neighbors.
Yeah, but when we look at entire societies, democracies, or massive corporate structures, the scale is completely different.
Exactly. Can the breadth of the knee player actually scale up to a population of millions?
It's a fair question.
And that is exactly where I get skeptical. I love the poetry of this, but let's be real. If I walk into a highly competitive, cutthroat corporate negotiation tomorrow and just act like the sun, someone is going to eat my lunch.
That's the standard fear, yeah.
When you're dealing with people who are actively trying to take your market share or shout you down on a public stage, doesn't relying on subtlety just mean you're being soft? Doesn't it make you a passive pushover?
And that assumption is the biggest hurdle to understanding this philosophy. We equate subtlety with weakness.
Because it's quiet.
Right. But the concept we are unpacking explicitly rejects passivity. To answer your question about scale in the corporate boardroom, we have to look at the mechanics of what is called the generative cycle.
The virtuous circle, right?
Exactly. What actually transforms a large group of people isn't just the sheer numbers of a loud majority, it is the undeniable gravity of quality.
The essay phrased it in a way that really stuck with me. It said, when virtuous individuals become visible, virtue becomes ordinary.
Let's break down how that contagion of competence actually functions.
Okay.
Think about a chaotic environment, maybe a team that is constantly bickering, where everyone is trying to be the loudest voice. If you inject one truly sincere, highly skilled person into that dynamic who operates with subtlety, the entire baseline shifts.
Because they refuse to play the same loud game.
Exactly. They don't have to shout. Their competence and their refusal to engage in the noise creates a new standard. People naturally start adjusting their behavior to meet that higher, quieter standard. The center of gravity moves toward them.
Because suddenly the person screaming in the corner just looks foolish rather than powerful.
Precisely. And the inverse is equally true. When a society or an organization stops encouraging that kind of deep competence, when art, ethics, and nuanced thought are devalued, the whole system freezes over.
And then what happens?
You end up with a landscape where the sheer volume of noise increases dramatically, but the actual depth of the conversation diminishes to nothing.
Noise increases, but depth diminishes. That feels like the defining tagline of our current era.
Unfortunately, yes.
So if subtlety isn't just sitting quietly while everyone else yells, and it isn't weakness, what is the actual definition? How do you practice it when you are in the middle of that noise?
It really comes down to one word: measure. Yeah. Subtlety is the rigorous, disciplined ability to remain outside of excess and deficiency. It is an active state of balance, not a passive state of surrender.
Okay, let's put that into practice. The concept here involves educating anger without suppressing it.
Right.
And also not losing one's manner even when one is right. Let's talk about the anger piece first.
Sure.
Because anger is a natural biological response to an obstacle. If you aren't suppressing it and you aren't blasting it like a blowtorch, how do you actually educate it?
Think of anger as an engine. If
Yeah.
you have fire contained within the boiler of a train, what does it do?
It creates steam, it builds pressure.
Right. And it moves the entire locomotive forward. That is educated anger. It has a purpose and a direction.
Ah, what?
But if you take that exact same fire and just throw it onto the wooden floor of the passenger car, you burn the whole train down.
You completely derail the situation.
Exactly. Subtlety is keeping the fire in the boiler. You feel the anger, you acknowledge the injustice or the obstacle, but you use that energy to provide sustained warmth and forward momentum rather than just scorching the person across from you.
And the second part, not losing your manner even when you are right, might be the hardest thing a human being can do.
Oh, without a doubt.
When you know you have the facts and the other person is dead wrong, the temptation to just intellectually crush them is overwhelming.
And that temptation comes entirely from the ego, which wants the immediate visible victory of the fire.
Right.
And this is where the philosophy gets into incredibly deep waters. It describes subtlety as carrying a trust with trembling care.
Trembling care.
Yes, our very ego, our sense of I-ness, isn't inherently evil, but it is a trust that has been handed to us. It is a fragile, incredibly powerful tool.
Wait, unpack that for me. When you say the ego's a trust, do you mean like a responsibility we've been given to manage?
Yes, exactly like a responsibility. Imagine you're handed a highly volatile, incredibly valuable substance. You wouldn't swing it around recklessly. You would hold it with trembling care.
You'd be hyper aware of it.
Right. When you treat your own ego with that kind of reverence and restraint, when you refuse to let it run rampant just to win an argument, you shift your position in the universe.
How so?
By yielding the desperate need to forcefully dominate the room, you align yourself with a much greater infinite power and wisdom. You realize you don't have to manufacture the fire yourself because you are connected to the source of the sun.
Wow. That requires so much more internal strength than just snapping at someone. Like anyone can lose their temper. But holding that volatility with trembling care and choosing to project warmth instead of dominance takes an incredible amount of mastery.
And we see the failure of that mastery across every major domain of human influence.
We really do.
True leadership, as the concepts point out, influences by warming the environment, not by burning the subordinates. True art transforms the viewer by making them feel something deeply internal, rather than just aggressively broadcasting a message at them.
And true religion or philosophy settles the human soul by softening it, not by frightening it into submission.
Spot on.
In every single one of those domains, the loud, forceful approach is basically a shortcut. It's a failure of imagination.
It's the blowtorch on the windshield again.
Exactly. But this brings us to a really uncomfortable pivot. We've talked about society, leadership, and art. But ultimately, all of this scales down to the individual listener sitting in their car or their living room right now.
Right.
The greatest test of this philosophy isn't out there in the world fighting grand political battles. The real test is internal.
The battleground is the cloudiness in our own hearts. There's a psychological reality we all face, which is our negativity bias.
We're evolutionarily wired to spot the tiger in the bush.
Exactly. We are wired to look for the threat, the flaw, the thing that is wrong. And when our internal vision becomes clouded by that bias, we look at the world and assume it is made entirely of deficiency.
You see this everywhere. You look at your spouse and only see the chores they forgot to do. You look at your career and only see the promotions you didn't get.
Yeah, you look at your community and assume everyone is just dropping the ball. You assume everything is fundamentally broken.
But this philosophy offers an incredible paradigm shift. The ultimate aha moment of all these concepts is this. The issue is not deficiency. It is a lack of contact.
That is the core of it.
A lack of contact. That entirely rewrites how we interact with conflict.
Think about the frozen branch again. The life inside that branch hasn't died. The potential for the leaves to grow hasn't vanished.
Right, it's just dormant.
The branch isn't deficient, it just hasn't been touched by the sun yet. The good in the people around you hasn't disappeared. Subtlety, warmth, and virtue haven't ceased to exist in the world. They have merely withdrawn because the environment is too cold.
The breath simply hasn't been blown into the flute yet.
Exactly.
So when we encounter a situation that looks hopelessly broken, like a teenager who won't communicate, a friend who is lashing out, a coworker who is being incredibly stubborn, our job isn't to attack the brokenness.
No, our job is to provide the contact, to be the sun for that specific patch of ice.
Wow. It changes your entire cognitive behavioral approach to the people in your life.
It really does. Instead of identifying the flaw and bringing the blowtorch to fix it, you recognize the coldness and you bring the defroster.
That makes so much sense.
Sometimes a family member doesn't need a loud, hyper-rational lecture about what they did wrong. They just need a warm glance that signals safety.
Right. And sometimes a friend making bad decisions doesn't need your harsh, pragmatic advice. They just need the sustained warmth of understanding so their own rigidity can melt.
It forces you to pause in those micro moments of friction and ask a very simple question. Am I acting like fire right now, or am I acting like the sun?
That's a question we all need to ask ourselves every single day. In a world that is constantly screaming at you to be louder, to be harsher, and to force your way through every single obstacle, the most powerful form of transformation you can wield is usually the quietest one.
Absolutely.
Fire burns, it consumes the oxygen in the room, and it leaves permanent scars on the landscape. But the sun warms, it nurtures, and it creates the conditions for life to actually grow. Burning is easy. Any amateur can start a fire.
Right. But warming is absolute mastery.
It truly is.
It's the difference between an ego-driven reaction and a grounded, masterful response. And as we wrap up this deep dive, there's one final thought I want you to sit with today.
Something to mull over.
Exactly. We've spent this time contrasting the loud destruction of fire with the quiet transformation of the sun. But consider the people in human history we remember as the most enduring catalysts for change. The figures whose legacies last centuries.
The ones who actually shifted the paradigm.
Right. They were rarely the ones who conquered the globe with fire and volume. I mean, a volcano is incredibly loud, it demands everyone's attention, and it scorches the earth.
Sure, it's impossible to ignore.
But the tectonic plates deep beneath the surface, they shift the entire planet without making a sound.
Wow.
The true masters of subtlety didn't just win arguments, they changed the ambient temperature of the culture so fundamentally, so quietly, that we forgot they were even doing it. The ice melted, and everyone just assumed spring had arrived on its own.
That's incredibly powerful.
So the question isn't just how you apply the sun to your life tomorrow, it's whether you have the discipline to be the tectonic shift rather than the volcano.